when I often think about style, there's always there's two camps. There's the people that get it, and style is usually, it's like, you know it when you see it. I think said, how do you know that something's pornographic versus art or beauty? And a lot of times the answer is, well, you know it when you see it. You know something is gross or smut as opposed to art.
Welcome back to the Surf Mastery Podcast. I am your host, Michael Frampton, and this is episode 100 of the podcast. Little bit of a milestone. Special guest for this episode. And we've also revamped the website, surfmastery.com, and on the front page of that website is a free PDF listing the top 5 tips from the Surf Mastery Podcast. So go to surfmastery.com and you can download that PDF for free. Today's guest, well, I was looking back through all the stats on this podcast, and the most downloaded episodes have been from Devon Howard. So it made sense to have him on episode 100. And so you can go back and listen to, he first appeared on the show, episode 41, discussing longboarding and nose riding. Then it was back in episode 70, we talked about mid-lengths. In episode 86, it was twin fins. And today, in episode 100, Devon Howard joins us again to discuss style. Style is something that is it's fundamental, it's paramount for every type of surfing that is done, from traditional longboarding all the way through to high performance shortboarding. All of the greats, all of the most memorable surfers have good style. They are stylish. From Joel Tudor in traditional longboarding through to Joel Parkinson as a high-performance, competitive shortboarder, Tom Curran, mid-lengths and twin fins, you've got Torren Martin, and of course, Devon Howard himself is a very stylish surfer. He's very smooth, very graceful on a longboard, on a mid-length and a twin fin. I've even seen some footage of him riding 3-fin thrusters out there on his Instagram, and his style, his technique, his gracefulness runs throughout his surfing. So a perfect topic for us to discuss in episode 100. So I would love to hear your feedback on the show in general, last 100 episodes, and of course this episode. Go ahead, send us an email, mike@surfmastery.com, or you can DM me on Instagram or leave a comment under the visual for this episode. And of course, support Devon Howard. Give his Instagram a follow. And of course, he's joining us from the Channel Islands office in Santa Barbara. Devon is currently working with Channel Islands, working on some new surfboard models, as well as he's some of the most popular boards recently have been he's been a part of. So without further ado, I shall fade in a conversation with Devon Howard. Can we start with a slightly controversial question?
I'll give it my best shot. What do you want to talk about?
Oh, how do you feel about the Grateful Dead?
Me? Oh. I'm pretty indifferent about them. I'm not a hater of the Grateful Dead, and I'm not into the music. I'll hear a couple of probably their 60s hits, like Truckin', there's a couple of the songs that, if it's on, I'll let it. Was it Sugar Magnolia? There's a couple that are like, yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
But are you referring to the debate between Britt Merrick and Chaz Smith about this?
Yes. Yeah.
It's pretty funny, huh?
It was pretty funny. Yeah, definitely. It seems to sort of split the audience.
Yeah, I do. I'm a little biased, of course. being on the home team with Britt Merrick, but he went over his time limit of the debate, but I think he made a really good case to convert people to the dead. I didn't know a lot of that information, and it's like you could still not like the music, but I do think, yeah, he made a strong case for why they play, I think, a great role in culture.
I actually see a lot of agreement between Britt and Chaz on this subject.
Yeah.
Because they're a thing, right? That you go to a Grateful Dead concert and you experience the show and the vibe. You don't really listen to them on Spotify.
Yeah, it's something to be enjoyed live.
Yeah, there's a certain style and vibe to them, I think, that come across differently in person than it does. And also the audience they sort of draw in.
Yeah.
Rather than the music on Spotify.
Right. There are two bands that I think are better live as well, which I think Radiohead is better live. I like Radiohead. I think a lot of their albums are great. I've been to a few of their shows, and this is 10 or 15 years ago. I don't know if that's still the case, but at the time when they were really peaking, they were insane live. And then I also saw James Brown live.
Oh, wow.
25 years ago, and that was incredible. Quite a showman.
Yes. Yeah, I can imagine. I remember there's the Radiohead live from the basement. Unbelievable. Like, gives you, I can't remember what album they play in full from their basement studio, and just makes you appreciate them on a whole nother level.
Yep.
Just by watching that on YouTube, not even being there. Yeah. I remember seeing a gentleman called Amp Fiddler, one of the best live acts I ever saw. Gave me a new appreciation of his music. He's sort of new age funk / reggae. Interesting music. Yep. Catch a Fire. They're doing a tour through California at the moment. They're another unbelievable band live. Their live performance and sound is bigger than their studio albums, I think. They're actually a New Zealand band. If you get a chance to see them, they often play in Santa Barbara. I forget the venue name. It's like a 500 capacity venue in Santa Barbara. They always play there.
Is that the Bowl? I'm not sure.
Can't remember. Anyway.
There's a lot of venues there, but
yeah. Style. Let's talk about style. Do you know the origin of the word?
I don't, but I'd imagine, I hope you did some research on it. Is it, the Latin word? Is it Greek? Where does it come from?
Let me sort of summarize from etymology online. From the early 14th century, started out as a writing instrument, pen or stylus, a piece of written discourse or narrative, characteristic rhetorical mode of an author, a manner or mode of expression, a way of life, behavior. Then the word sort of transformed, the evolution of the word from writing tool went into writing, into manner of writing, into mode of expression, in writing of a particular writer or author. And then it was in the 1500s, it was paired with the word substance, which basically meant back then divine part or essence. And it sort of gave the word a deeper meaning, including fine appearance or dashing character. Then the word then went into an artist's particular mode or form of skilled presentation. That was later extended into athletics. Then by the 1800s, it was distinctive or characteristic mode of dress. Obviously, that was more in regards to fashion. And so there's a little bit of a history of the word. So I think there's a lot of depth to that, and it's certainly it's very apt for surfing. A lot of those meanings, I think.
Yes.
Tell me what you think about style and how important it is.
Well, style is, from my personal experience growing up, it was a measure of good surfing, and it was a marker of like one's own presentation of their expression of surfing. I don't want to cheapen it by, I guess, using the word brand, like your brand of surfing, but everyone has their own form of expression, and style is oftentimes I see style as making the difficult look easy. And my own belief in, just absorbing what was around me. When I was a kid, we're humans, we sort of mimic and imitate what's around us. I haven't innovated anything really at all. I've just looked what's around, and you take bits and pieces. First, you take it from your parents, of course, and then as you get out in the world, it's like what's going on around you. And in San Diego, where I grew up, and I think this was the same in many other surf cities in not only the U.S., but the world. In the 80s, the older surfers, 10 to 20 years older than you, were style focused, as opposed to this idea of ripping or tearing something apart and doing it with reckless abandon. That was something that started getting more popular as I was a kid. So I was sort of born into this era where one thing was kind of falling out of favor, and this other form of surfing was gaining popularity. And sorry, that was kind of a muddled answer, but I think it's one of the most difficult subjects in surfing to discuss or to describe because it's so subjective. And it comes with the word style comes with a lot of different ideas to people, ranging from beauty to something that's very contrived and non-functional.
Yeah. I mean, the word style itself has, as you sort of addressed, has a lot of meanings. Like everyone has their own unique style, you could say, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they are stylish. So when we think of stylish surfers, we think of beauty and grace and flow. And I think it is related to that. And it's related to efficiency, right? I mean, Rob Machado comes to mind. I think he's sort of an incredibly stylish surfer, but he's also fits in that modern category of radical.
Yeah.
He encompasses both. And I mean, world champ Joel Parkinson obviously fit the criteria of competition surfing, but remained incredibly smooth and stylish.
Yeah. Well, I think depending where you grew up and what culture you came from or grew up in, style could also just not be that important. If surfing to you or just to any individual is about really pushing as hard as they can with maneuvers and being as radical as they can and, tearing apart a wave. Like you think of the Brazilian Storm guys, they're for years have been, they're well-deserved. They're incredible athletes. They are highly athletic, and it is explosive maneuvers, and they're acrobats in many ways. For some reason, as that has gained popularity, some aspects of the presentation have sort of fallen to the wayside, where in gymnastics, presentation and form is still really part of the whole thing, was never really like if you do a floor routine in gymnastics, or let's say dance or anything like that, they're doing really kind of athletic, powerful moves, but they also keep the form. And I don't know quite the exact reason, but that sort of started falling out of favor in surfing, mostly because what drives our conversations oftentimes revolves around competition surfing. Like competition surfing drives a lot of the media narratives. Let's say where do we get our information from? It's driven by the WSL to whatever extent that is, Stab and their audience, Surfline kind of sort of, but they're more focused on cameras and whatnot. And then most of the magazines have gone out of business, but only 10 years ago, a lot of the stories were driven by the personalities and the folks that competed. And there was a mixed bag in there of surfers that had great style, like Joel Parkinson, who you mentioned. I would say Kelly Slater has a a good style. It's a different style. It's his own. And then on the opposite end of that would be like an Adriano de Souza or somebody like that, where he's clearly just incredibly talented, but sort of putting his surfing together in like one seamless, fluid motion was not a focus of his. And so it's been interesting to watch in the broader conversations in the mainstream how that sort of played out. And back to where I grew up on the fringe of all that anyways. So I was riding longboards in the 80s and 90s. That was as fringe as it got. And in that world, all through that time, style was still important. Even when folks were trying to emulate shortboard maneuvers on longboards, there was still an emphasis of style. Sorry, I'll shut up. I don't know where I'm going with that, but
yeah. So I'm just wondering, when you look at, I mean, I think you mentioned the Brazilian Storm. I think Gabriel Medina is quite stylish, not all the time, but probably actually more so when you see him free surf. He just seems to be more relaxed when he's not surfing in a competition. And I think that's maybe what separates I think that's a big part of being stylish, is you're very calm and you're relaxed. That doesn't necessarily mean you're going slower or that you're even putting less effort in. It's just maybe, you referenced gymnastics. I think a gymnast could do the same routine, they get the same height, the same amount of power, but if one of their runs, they were purposely trying to keep the presentation of themselves relaxed and calm, it would be more visually appealing. It was sort of making it look easy.
Yeah, that's the thing, making the difficult look easy. In the 60s or 50s or whatever, the boards weren't very maneuverable. So clearly the market for surfing was just people who were stylish and could kind of keep it together. Hang on one second. Are you hearing a beeping on your end when I'm getting messages?
Yeah, is that your phone?
Yeah, I don't know how to turn off the iMessage on my...
Oh, it's on the computer.
I'm trying to see how to undo this.
Is this on your phone or your laptop or your iPad?
It's on my laptop.
Oh.
Sorry, you're going to have to edit this out. That's all right. I'm just getting like everyone in the world fucking looking me up. Decline. Do you have any idea how to get rid of iMessage off your preferences, services?
That's a good question. I don't have my laptop linked to my phone, so
yeah, don't do it. Preferences, maybe. Let's see.
I'd say it'd be under notifications and focus. There's like a bell symbol
on the computer itself or on the phone.
I'm looking on my laptop.
Where did you find the notifications?
In system preferences.
Okay, system preferences, notifications. There they are. Look at that.
Yeah, and top right, there's a button, allow notifications. You can turn that off or on. I'd say that's it.
Let me find messages. There we go. Okay, I'm going to turn that off. Okay, apologies for that.
It's
I think
okay.
we solved.
All right. So
where were we?
Let me throw out some adjectives that I wrote down after thinking about style a little bit.
Yeah.
Efficient, graceful, functional, calm, focused, relaxed, grounded, present, fearless, or maybe better put, courageous. Is there anything you would add to that, or you think shouldn't be there?
No, I just think it's more about a calm and a gracefulness. It's mostly what it is. And it's just the form of your personal expression. I think a lot of the style, you'll see style of folks from a distance, and a lot of ways it matches up to their personality. You'll see someone who's quite busy, a lot of kinetic, sort of frantic motions, and not always the case, but sometimes like, okay, this person's a little over caffeinated in general. You know, the really mellow, kind of quiet people have this very quiet, always meet a really quiet surfer with their style, and they're really loud and obnoxious. There's exceptions to the rule, but if you think about it quickly, there's not often the case. And so I think a lot of those adjectives actually work pretty well. I don't. Did you say courageous?
Yeah.
I don't really know that that applies to it, really. I don't think it's really much to do with courage, other than,
Well, I was thinking that I was just wondering if that was a better word than fearless.
mm,
Because if you look scared, that's not very stylish, is it?
no, no, it's very, you're tensed up. And yeah, I've said to people, I don't do surf coaching, but if I've ever seen someone in the water and it looks like they're struggling, if it's appropriate or sort of convenient, like they're just sort of right there, I'll say, do you mind if I offer some advice? It's usually well received. A lot of times I've said, I think you just relax a little bit. Your body's too tense. Looks bad, but it also screws up your ability to surf because now it's affected the form. Like you're sort of hunched over and bracing for like some sort of impact where you need to be more relaxed. The arms need to be relaxed. The shoulders should be relaxed, surely. You should be able to sort of slink back and into your knees and your hips and let those kind of bend and sort of sit into the board nicely. And so I think when I often think about style, there's always like, there's two camps. There's the people that get it, and style is usually, it's like you know it when you see it. I think someone said, how do you know that something's pornographic versus art or beauty? And a lot of times the answer is, well, you know it when you see it. You know something is gross or smut as opposed to art. Like you go into an art gallery and there's naked, images of a naked person. How is that not pornography? And it's like, well, you know it when you see it. And it's like style, you sort of know it when you see it. And then you have the other end of that where people will feel style is just posing and looking cool. Like you putting your hands in the air to look like Alex Nost or Mickey Dora or Rob Machado, whoever insert the surfer. You're trying to mimic their hand placement, and sometimes the hand placement provides no real function or value to the ride, other than it might feel good, I guess, but it's not making you surf better. Where I often will argue or believe that yes, there are people that pose, and that does exist, grant you that, but good style also brings about really good form. Or I would look at it a different way. Really good form pulls along the style into it. So if you have good form, and whether that's in a barrel or a cutback, if your body is doing sort of the right things to make a beautiful, seamless ride easier, along with that usually comes a pretty good style. If you don't have a good style, a lot of times the form is really working against your surfing. So for example, you got to do a cutback and your arm is up and back. I'm front side, and let's say I'm turning this way. Front side cutback. Well, if my back arm is in the air, waving behind me, I'm really struggling to get my body around. And I'm actually having to work really hard, could potentially even injure yourself. So that really hinders your surfing. But if I brought the arm in and drop it down and then have the arm kind of point toward where I want to go, the rest of my body goes, and it's actually quite easy to do the turn. Mm-hmm. And consequently, it looks much better. It doesn't look so awkward.
Yeah.
And this can be said of your front arm. I've seen folks do cutbacks where I don't know why this happens, but sometimes their front arm is sort of flailing and going behind them over here, or they're extending and reaching too far. So when there's this nice balance of the front and the backhand on a front side cutback, looks cool. Hey, that's great. If someone took a photo, yeah, you probably put it on the wall. It's pretty good. Looks like Michael Peterson or somebody or whatever. Joel Parkinson. Ethan Ewing would be a really good contemporary example, I guess. And but when it's all sort of like the form is there, it looks good, but now you're surfing better and the turn is faster and more complete. And also when you have nice form, you get the board in trim. What I mean by that is when the board's in trim, it's sort of, if you know anything about sailing, when everything's in alignment with the boat and the sail, and the boat is really hitting its top speed. There's nothing really hindering or dragging or fighting against that top trim speed. In surfing, you want to get to the top trim speed because when you have speed, it's easier to complete maneuvers. It's less work. You go into the maneuvers with speed, you can do them a lot better. It's like snowboarding. If anyone's snowboarded, you know that the first few days you're learning, the instructor will say, you just need to get going faster. You're like, what? Wait, no, that's scary. I don't want to go faster. Well, you're going so slow that's why you're tumbling and you're catching an edge and you're getting stuck on the hill. Go faster. And then you see this light bulb moment with people like, my gosh, well, I should have just been going faster all along. It's the same with surfing. You'll see people struggling to get trim speed because their form is so terrible. They're not understanding that the board is not even in trim. The nose is out. Or they're waving their arms. They're shaking their body like this, and they're trying to wiggle and do stuff. And you're watching the board underneath, and the board is just like on a gimbal, just like not getting any trim. It's just stop and go, stop and go. So it's this utter fail where if the person just relaxed a little bit, relax their arms, don't try to flop the body around, and just get the idea of even going straight, which is hard to do on a shortboard. Clearly, if you're a beginner, you probably shouldn't even be on the board. It's just going to be a struggle. Get a board that's medium, like a mid-length or something, or a longboard, where you can kind of stand there and glide and trim, and then you can kind of get that form where your body's relaxed. And so a lot of times good style, I believe, just comes with the right form, if that makes sense.
I totally agree. Yeah, and that's I think that's what the surf coach's job is. And then it's once the person becomes, at first the better form will feel strange and maybe even abnormal and uncomfortable. And it's only once that form becomes ingrained and you become comfortable with it, then it looks stylish. So it's maybe it's a precursor to style is good form.
Yeah, I think so. Another thing that I've thought about a lot in the last several years about style is it sort of belies the technique or the difficulty of the maneuver. I think if it looks like someone's trying really super hard to do like let's say a crazy air, or just like the craziest turn where like they blow the tail out and spin the board around, and like, oh, whoa, that was insane. That was so difficult. But if you see somebody do a top speed cut back and they don't lose or drift the fins, and they're just going Mach 20 and just bam, come up fluid and seamless, you might say, man, that was really smooth. That was really stylish. But you don't often think that was also really difficult. It's interesting. And I'm not trying to get people to cheer more for the stylist, I guess, but I think it's worth sort of acknowledging that Mikey February or Torrin Martin and some of those things they're doing, we're drawn to them because they're beautiful, which is undeniable. But it's also interesting to think that these are the highest level people at the very upper echelon, at the top peak of, ability of surfing. And it's something to be learned there, like to not just only acknowledge and only see the style, which is great. I love that. I'll watch that stuff all day long, but to like hit the rewind button and look at what they're doing and how on rail that board is and how difficult it is to hold the line and not lose it. Because a lot of times, especially in performance shortboarding, it's incredible what the surfers do. It's like it's a controlled failure of the surfing. So a lot of times when the fins release, and I know this because I put a lot of thought into fins and foils and whatnot. A lot of the best high performance surfing maneuvers are a controlled failure. They're pushing the limits of the board, but a lot of times the fins or the equipment can't really handle what these surfers are giving it. It's really interesting. Look at someone laying into a turn and their butt is sliding across the wave and the fins and the board and everything's sliding. And then look at like a Mick Fanning or somebody who can hold that, or Ethan Ewing, and hold it all the way through. That's gnarly. That is just like peak form, but you're like, man, that was so smooth, but you're not ever saying that was so difficult to do. And I don't know what the point is I'm making. I guess it comes back to like the kind of surfing I like to do. Could be easily scoffed at as pretty easy. Like, hey, mid-length surfing, you're just going straight. It's not really difficult. But I don't know, man. At the highest levels, like I think what Torrin Martin does, I think what February does if he's on a mid length, or other, there's other surfers out there doing it. And I kind of watch, wow, look at that. 5/6 of the rail of that board is buried. And that's what I do myself. And that's, to me, that's the most thrilling thing, is to bury that rail. How far can I push this thing before it fails me? That's just really, really thrilling. You're just on the edge of disaster. When you go on one of those 7-foot boards, go to the bottom, slink, and coil up into the board and push it as hard as you can. Alex Noss does this really good as well. I can go on forever. People do a great job of this, and they push all that board through. And then if you don't watch it, if you're not too far forward or too much weight on your front foot, you'll slingshot up the face is this fast, free feeling, like a flying feeling that's highly addictive. And it's something that you just keep, like people that are into those types of boards, they just keep chasing it. And then down the line, do the same thing again. Now I'm going to bury a whole lot of rail on the cutback. How hard can I push it? And when I get down to the bottom of the wave, can I just keep going right back to the whitewater? Yes, I can. Just keep going. Sometimes it doesn't work out. And if you blow that, you're doing the splits on the board. Now you've got a torn MCL. But you're going full throttle. And that on that type of equipment, the form is important so that you don't botch it, because you really could get injured on some of these things. Probably someone who hears this is going to laugh and think this is a joke. Like, you're being really hyperbolic, bro. Come on. It's just a mid-length and you're over water. When you're pushing it really hard, it's thrilling and it's exciting, and it is difficult to do. And I think it's really appealing to a lot of people. And then they go and try and do it and say, man, I wish I could surf like Rod Machado on this thing.
Yeah. Well, all the surfers
take 10 years.
Yeah, if not longer. I think all the surfers you mention and the way you talk about their surfing is they stay connected. As they're going through the turns and in between turns, there's no radical gain or loss of speed.
Right.
It's just where they do the cutback isn't just a change of direction. It's in sync with that part of the wave. So they stay connected to the power source. So there's a certain, it's a radical maneuver, but the speed doesn't waver too much. Whereas some surfers might jump up to the top and bust the fins, and they might slow right down and then fall back down into the wave and go again. And it looks good in photos and maybe gets judged well in a competition, but it's not necessarily, they're not as connected to the wave as other surfers.
Yeah. And again, that's debatable. I'm sure there's plenty of people who will feel opposite of that. And that's great. Surfing's subjective.
Yeah.
And, in just to bring it back a little bit to competition, if that's okay. I know lots of people don't care about surf competition, but it is where a lot of the best surfing's happening. It's where the high bar is a lot of times. And in the 60s and 70s, style was just sort of, it wasn't like there was a style box that was ticked. It was sort of like this nice little cozy and little wrapping around the surfing that was just a given, so it didn't really need to be discussed. And then in the 80s, and probably really the late 70s, when the twin fin was really coming on with MR pushing that and Sean Thompson and other people chasing him, they were packing in as many maneuvers as they possibly could into a ride to tick away more points. And this isn't my own thought or original idea. I've read these things elsewhere, and I agree with this take, which is somewhere along the way, the beauty just sort of eroded, because the focus is now we're getting really fixated on number of maneuvers and this real technical aspect of the difficulty of the maneuvers. And surfing is already highly subjective, and you have this even more subjective thing, style. And someone maybe could correct me if I'm wrong. Maybe there was a style element at some point. I'm not aware of it. Maybe there was. And so anyways, the 80s kind of moves on, and there were clearly lots of stylish surfers. I mean, I grew up like many people my age. I'm 50, so I worshiped Tom Curran. And I loved Tommy Carroll and a bunch of folks. There was lots of style, but there was also some people with some really hideous style, like Gary Elkerton, Odo David, and all these people. Nothing against them, man. Like, I think they're all incredible surfers, but there were some hideous styles, and they crushed it in contests because they were just animals, and they were lacerating, tearing it up. And because the broader culture is being driven by whatever media is being consumed, and the media at the time was really sort of swiveling and craning and watching what's going on in competition, because that's like where the money's being plugged in. So those brands, like, hey, we validate this thing we're doing, which is competition surfing. And it just boiled down to, what do you got to do to win this thing? And if making it look beautiful was not ever important, why would you spend time doing that? Tom Curran couldn't help himself. He was stylish no matter what. But lots of other surfers weren't, and they did very well. And so as the decade or two ensues, just the sort of broad mainstream viewpoint was that style just wasn't important. However, the people that were in the sort of the underground, your locals, people that sort of stuck to the fringe, and even in people that shortboarded as well, obviously, still kind of kept style alive. And the reason style always stayed alive is because the idea that human beings are drawn and attracted to beauty is as old as time, I think. I mean, who knows when that began? I had a really nice chat with David Scales on Surf Splendor, and we spoke about this there. So if you want to hear more about this, go check that out. I think it was a nice conversation. But I'll sort of reiterate some of the points there. I read an article by Scott Hewlett in the Surfer's Journal, and he wrote quite a bit about style. And he illustrated a point that I've never considered. And he started talking about this Greek artist. It was like 500 BC. I'm like, where's this thing going? Why are we talking about bronze sculptures? But he made a really brilliant point, which is, okay, why does style matter? Why do we keep talking about it? And it's because beauty endures. It is a common theme in human nature. Now, in recent times, I'd say beauty is being abandoned. If you look at modern architecture in just about any town, everything looks like shit. So I don't know what's going on there. We used to make beautiful buildings, and now we're stopping doing it. We can't control that. But in surfing, we keep getting drawn back to this idea of beauty, despite all those things that happened that we just talked about in the 80s and 90s of competition surfing and getting derailed. The broad culture still is always known instinctively that this is something that we should never stop cherishing. We should never stop celebrating. And I think it's backed up by, if you go to any Torren Martin video, go down to this thing below the screen that says views. A lot of Torren Martin videos have like 1 million+ views. Mm-hmm. Go over to Gabriel Medina or anyone, and I'm not picking on these people, just pick anybody. I'll bet you right now that Torren is beating a lot of those surfers 2 or 3 or 4 to 1 in terms of views. Now you could argue that, well, there's a lot more Gabriel Medina type surfers, and there's not that many Torren Martins. I'll give you that. But I think it's really because we are drawn to beauty. And so back to that Surfer's Journal article, which is, he said, imagine taking those Greek statues and putting a surfboard underneath them. And when I was done reading the article, I went and I Googled 500 BC Greek statue, and I forget the artist's name. I think it's some Greek name. And I was instantly like, look at that. Yeah, you just put a surfboard under these statues. And some of the form and posture was a little bit silly, but a lot of it was pretty spot on. And then you go right over to Jerry Lopez, or you go to Mikey February or somebody else, and you can see that there's a similarity to this idea of beauty. And then you go take it steps further, take it to any type of traditional dance. Have you ever seen ugly, poor form in any dance scenario where there's like serious people, whether it's ballroom or it's swing or it's foxtrot or it's tango or it's salsa? It's just incredibly beautiful. And it's this expression. The music is coming in, you're viewing and watching and feeling the music. There's that input, and the output is what these people are feeling. And so that our output in surfing is that form and that expression. bullfighters, same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Now the bullfighters have a little more of a pose at the end. The bull's coming in, and the bull goes through the cape, and they kind of hold it, and they sort of like, it's almost like a taunting of the bull, like, you didn't kill me, and look how calm I am right here. And a lot of the surfers in the 50s and 60s, they really admired the bullfighters. There's a great shot of Joey Cabell in Peru in the 60s. Guy's never bullfought before, but he's down there, and there's pictures of him in the bull ring with a Hawaiian print shirt on. Doing the whole full ole, and so this idea of style really is always going to matter and always be important to us, so long as we don't ever abandon this attraction of ours to beauty. We're attracted to beautiful people, clearly, that's a given, right? But we're really drawn to beautiful things, art, architecture, a wonderful garden, an unmolested landscape. And so I don't think people really care to give too much thought about style. I think it's just sort of like I said, you know it when you see it. Does it really need to be talked about? But I think in the context of a podcast like yours, where people are trying to improve their surfing, having a real understanding that this isn't just for show. Style isn't just to look cool. It's not like putting on a cool outfit to look cool. It's a real purpose-driven thing. Certain articles of clothing look great, but they also have a purpose. Maybe it has SPF in it. Maybe it's built for a particular activity to make it more comfortable. For us, as I was saying in the very beginning, like the form, the style sort of follows the form. And if you really think about your form, and you're relaxed and you're sort of paying attention to the things that you talk about on your podcast or where people get their information, there's lots of different YouTube things, obviously. You too could have nice style if you so desire.
I 100% agree. Surfing is first and foremost an art form.
Mm-hmm.
It's only within competition that it becomes a sport. And then, yes, sometimes we don't necessarily we sacrifice a bit of style for progression, perhaps. Is what's happening when surfing is a sport. I still think the best of the best combine. Like John, he's number one at the moment for a reason, not just because he's progressive, but because he will do a progressive turn with calm style like no one else.
Right. Yeah.
So I still have faith. I think there'll be the odd slip up, Toledo's frantic aerial maneuver that goes higher than everyone else. The judges they can't not score it, So, there'll be blips in the system, glitches in the matrix per se, until the judges, really start to consider style and make that a point, which hopefully maybe one day they will. I think it would make surfing more watchable.
Well, they have done so in longboard surfing.
Yes,
longboard surfing has a much smaller audience, obviously, but as I believe you and I talked about in the past, I think we did, I was at the WSL for a few years and I worked on the longboard tour, and built into the criteria is the word style. Also, two other words, flow and grace.
Mm-hmm.
Style, flow, grace is in the criteria. And it's a little difficult to train the judges on it, It's highly subjective. It's something we could sit here for an hour breaking down style, flow, grace, and we'll still feel like we barely scratched the surface. Because it is highly subjective, just like art is, just like music is, just like food is, just like what kind of waves I like are. It's just like that. It's just really can be difficult to put your finger on it. But the way we did the training to help these judges, if anyone cares to know this stuff, is have them really focus on somebody making something really difficult look easy, but also at the same time, don't lose sight of the positioning of the wave and the difficulty of the maneuver, because to the untrained eye, you could see someone doing a nose ride, and maybe they're doing something really what you may think is beautiful on the nose. Maybe their arms are held a certain way and just looks kind of like cool. But if you pay close attention, they're like 10 feet in front of the pocket, and you're like, that's not that hard to do. So what helps is, in the other part of the criteria is the the degree of difficulty. That is part of it. So you're looking at the style, flow, and grace, but you're applying it to, are these surfers in the pocket? Is the surfer using their rail, or are they lifting the board out of the water? Because to lift a longboard out of the water and turn it is far easier than engaging the rail in the water and pushing it through a turn. That's much more difficult. And so it has been applied in longboard surfing. Let's see if we can, if anyone cares, we could try to do a campaign to get the shortboard tour to break the board.
I'm with you. I'm with you. Ultimately, I do think it shines through, and the cream always rises to the top. But it would be nice if it was literally in the criteria and it was considered by each surfer to be a worthy consideration. Coming back to form, I'm going to share my screen with you. Hopefully this works. Oh shit, did that work? Can you see my screen?
I think so. Let me move mine up here a little bit. Oops, too many things around here. I'm terrible at computer stuff. 1 second. So where is that? Okay, I can see it now.
So there's an example of if that was placed on the nose of a longboard, it'd be quite cool.
Yeah, it's pretty close.
But then also, so here's, you see on the left there is the way that a baby learns to stand. Now, because the infant is so weak, there's only one way that they can learn to roll over and learn to stand up and hold themselves. Because their muscles are so weak, their bones have to be placed so accurately in order for them to be able to stand and move. And that's how we learn. Because of our weakness and our slow progression into strength, we learn the most efficient way possible. Now, it's the athletes that maintain that neurological efficiency that end up with the best form naturally, i.e. the way Kelly Slater's standing there in those barrels. Not only is he standing in a very similar way to the infant there, he's also very calm and relaxed in that position.
Yeah, I would definitely not be that calm in that way. Those waves.
Exactly. So it does come back to form. And it's also when an athlete is standing with their joints, we in DNS we call it joint centration, and the bones are stacked on top of each other in a very efficient way, it just looks right. Not only does it look right, the way the forces are spread throughout the body, it doesn't feel hard. Everyone who's ever tried to skate a vert ramp, for example, a half pipe, it feels like, oh man, my legs aren't strong enough. How do people? And then you watch a 12-year-old just go up and down. They're not doing it because their legs are stronger than yours. They're not even doing it because they're stronger relative to their body weight. They're doing it because they're stacking themselves, their bones and their joints are centered properly. And the force is being transferred throughout their entire body through the center of the bone and into the skateboard. Whereas someone who doesn't know what they're doing, they're trying to muscle their way through it. Not only does it feel terrible, it looks terrible.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, so it does come back to efficiency. And you said good style is that you know it when you see it. My question to you is, do you know it when you feel it?
Yes, I believe so. I know I've even had moments where I just didn't feel like I was in the right form, and it just didn't, the turn didn't feel good, or the particular movement, maybe it's a nose ride or something, didn't feel great. And if you get a chance to be lucky enough to come across a video or a photo of that moment, you're like, yeah, that is actually backs it up. It looks a bit awkward. It looks a bit off. So, and you definitely can feel good style because you it's all tethered to itself. Like it feels good. It looks good. And it's sort of like carries on the ride. It's like when you get off the very beginning of the ride and the first bottom turn is successful and your feet are in the right place, it really sets up the rest of the ride. If you botch that, let's say you screw it up getting to your feet or off the bottom, then you screw up the pace of the wave. So I've had times where my feet were too far forward or back or whatever, or I hit a chop and my arm sort of waved a little bit, and then I got out of that rhythm, and that definitely didn't feel good, and it certainly didn't, because it looked like I was rolling up the windows. as opposed to my arms being sort of down and going the direction that I want to be headed. A lot of times the front hand, the back hand, oftentimes are going the direction you want to go. I find that to be very helpful. And that feels good to me because I feel really centered. Or you would say stacked. I never thought of it that way. But so yeah, I would agree. I would say you definitely feel it. My own belief is I don't do anything in the style that I feel is what's called contrived, where I'm trying to present a form of some kind that has a certain look. The form I have is really based off of function. And that's because I watched the generation or two ahead of me at waves like Wind and Sea and Cardiff Reef. And I watched the elders and I really watched closely what they were doing, how they were sinking down into the board. And I noticed that their fingers were never apart. Their hand gestures were sort of always in the direction of where their board and body was heading. It was like this stacking or centering. You kind of like hunker down, but they never looked stiff or scared or afraid of anything or timid. It was a very confident, almost like a martial artist, like a kung fu person or something that has confidence in the form of that particular move. The really good surfers, the real standout surfers, I identified that pretty young, and I said, I need to learn how to do that. So it was never a contrived thing. Like, I need to look good and look cool. I just knew that was good surfing. And as a consequence of learning and going through that, it also felt really good. It was like a good golf swing. I don't golf at all, but I have friends who do. And I can understand like how much work they put into that golf swing. And when they do that, clearly it looks good from a distance because they hit the ball and it goes right where they want it to go. So that's pretty awesome. But they'll tell you it feels good. It's like, or baseball. If you've ever played baseball, you know the feeling of a home run. There's a sound of the bat and a feel through the bat into your hands. And you feel it, the follow through of the swing. You're like, that ball is out of here. It's pretty cool. A reward to, not that it's work, but there's sort of like this payoff and a reward to the dedication that it took to learn that art form.
But it always comes back to the feeling.
Yeah, it really does. Yeah, I haven't put too much thought into the feeling piece of it, but yeah, this is gonna sound really dumb and shallow, but I've had moments where the wave or the ride didn't feel good, and I didn't even finish the wave. I was so not into the feeling, I just kicked out. I've botched this thing so bad that someone else just needs to finish it. I just kick out and I go back up to the top and kind of regroup and go, what just went wrong there? And then, like surfing, everyone surfs for different reasons too. Like for some people, surfing is a couple times a month. It's an escape for them. They don't care if they surf well. That's not what they're there for. Like
they're probably not listening to this though.
Probably not. And I've had people say, man, you look so serious when you're surfing. And I'm like, I'm pretty serious about it. Like to me, it's so strange. It's serious fun. And it's, as I've gotten older, I haven't lost interest in it. It's like a hunt to me. It's really weird, and I don't know if it's just some human thing of like the game and the chess moves and the everything involved with observing pattern. I've observed patterns for decades, and now I see the patterns, and the benefit for me is I know which wave to pick, and I know where to be. And by knowing that, I've set up the ride, and therefore I've sort of like predetermined this feeling that I'm after, which is, as I said, it's highly addicting. Surfing, like you never satiated. Why is that? You always want another one. You always want more. But all through this process, the hunt, the enjoying, understanding the patterns, the chasing the moment, the feeling, there's a tremendous sense of, there's like a reward when all the elements have come together and you apply everything you've learned. It's a really cool feeling. I think you could say that about a lot of things in life. Whatever your craft is, And for me, surfing isn't just like some waste of time thing. Like that's part of it. That's a bonus to me. Like, hey, I'm not doing chores or I'm not at work. That's fantastic. I will take that. But it's also like a craft. It's like it's a way I express myself. Some people do that through building things out of wood in their garage or a number of other things. So the style piece of it's just sort of come along with it. It never was like, I'm going to really think about this super duper hard. And you learn through time that the style and the form, they sort of like are tied together, you know, and you kind of look at it this way, and then you go back and look at it the other way, and they really come together nicely. And if you fight them, you're not going to surf as well. If you're not surfing as well, you're not going to feel it as right. You won't feel that thing we just talked about. And then consequently, not that many people care, but your surfing is going to be kind of ugly.
But the thing is, it'll feel
yeah,
it'll feel disconnected, because when you're connected and you're efficient, it feels better. Simple as that. It feels better. If you close your eyes and just imagine like an image or a video section of someone who epitomizes style, what are they feeling in the moment? Are they worried about what they look like?
No.
No. Are they scared?
No.
Are they putting in a ton of effort?
I would say no.
Yeah. They're just in the moment.
Yeah. There's probably a small number of people who it's contrived. Like you could go to Byron Bay. Sorry, Byron Bay. I'm going to pick on you right now. You could go to Malibu. Pick your spot. Maybe Manu Bay. I don't know. Way inside there. There's going to be places where there are folks that, for whatever reason, like who cares? There's no like laws or rules. Like I'm not mad about this. They're just observations. That's it. They're really it's just so contrived. They're sort of putting the form. I'm sorry. Let me back up. They're putting the presentation ahead of the form. You know, they're worried about all the bells and whistles and the dressing, but like at the core of all the ingredients going into making this beautiful thing, they've got it all wrong. You know, and so
you can always smell that, though. I think,
yeah, it's a missed opportunity for them. Doesn't change my life or your life or anybody listening. You do you, man. Like I'm very libertarian in that way. I don't really care, but we're on a podcast called Surf Mastery, so we're nerding out. And if you're here to get better, don't get caught up in the presentation. Get caught up in the form. The presentation's going to come along. And yeah, it's just like this beautiful byproduct. You shouldn't have to try to have good style. You should try to be good at surfing. And then once you have that confidence, you know, if you see a photo or catch a surf line rewind, if you can see that far, and you happen to notice that your hands are bent at the wrist and going in instead of out, or you happen to notice that your fingers are wide apart, you could pull them in, and it looks better, but it also centers and stacks you. You start feeling more stacked over your board. And once you start doing that, it starts improving. Your style just starts improving. And it's interesting that tube riding, this is what we talked about with David the other day, I think, or maybe we didn't, I can't remember, but someone I was talking to about, it's interesting that almost all good tube riding has good style, most of it. You rarely see someone with really hideous style getting a sick barrel.
Yeah.
So
yeah, because the wave will hit them in the butt with their poo stance. Yeah. They don't fit in there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think
it's true.
There's a lesson there that can be applied to other maneuvers. Like, but it's not always true that good tube style now equates to this beautiful style in the face. You'll see where it's going to fall apart. Why is that? I don't know exactly. I think one thing that can help with style, from a technique standpoint, is don't rush your surfing. I've noticed like folks that, remember we were talking earlier about breaking trim?
Mm-hmm.
And you've seen people that are trying to wiggle, they're sort of swaying. A lot of times it's the upper body that's swaying, when that's not really helping them in any way. It's not benefiting the ride. It's causing the board to lift out of the water on a side-to-side motion typically, and now you're breaking the trim. Now, in a short board, a shortboard needs to be side to side, but it's also got to be pushed so that it's building momentum in a forward fashion. The people that are not very good are kind of not going anywhere because they don't understand that. They're just sort of wiggling their arms and breaking the trim. And I think if you just like think about being a little bit more quiet, and being a little bit more quiet means you're not in a big hurry. Like if you're not at a level where you need to try to get 8 maneuvers into a wave, don't do it. Take your time and get the 2 really nice maneuvers, and those will feel really good. Be patient off the bottom. Let's start from the beginning. You go and you paddle in, you go to do a bottom turn. Just be there in that moment with that bottom turn. Don't be thinking about the 4 moves you want to do down the line, because now it becomes this rut. You're hurrying up the surfing. And now you're kind of like screwing up the pace of the ride. You're screwing up the pace of the wave. Mm-hmm. And when you do that, now you're out of sync. When you're out of sync, it doesn't feel or look good. So I think the best advice to like, how do I get good style? Start with the forehand and don't rush your surfing.
I love that.
Don't try to contrive it. Don't try to like, I'm going to make sure my hands are up here and I'm going like this and I'm looking backwards and going, woo. Okay, you do you. But that's not helping you surf better.
Yeah. You can be quick without being rushed.
Exactly.
Yeah, like a drummer that's drumming at 160 beats per minute. If they're ahead of the beat slightly, it sounds rushed. But if they're on the beat, it's in time, it's rhythm, and they're nice and relaxed. They're still fast. They're just not rushed.
Totally.
And it's interesting you mentioned like the hands curled in like this. If your hands are curled in like this, you will feel scared. Your physiology affects your emotions. That's a scared posture. That's a protective posture. So if you forcefully open up your hands, like Tony Robbins says, stand up tall and straight and relaxed, you will feel better. Force yourself to smile. You will feel better inside. So I think that, a bit of video analysis and analyzing your own style can actually, and changing it can actually make surfing feel better as well. But I love those tips you just said, and it was a good summary, and it's a great place to end. Devon, thank you so much.
Hey. All right. I hope we made some sense there. It's fun to talk about it because I've felt this stuff for a long time, but I don't really ever talk about it. And it's only just in recent times. And I got to thank Scott Hewlett from the Surfer's Journal for getting the gears going in my mind of how to think about this stuff. Mm-hmm. And it's fun to share it. So I hope people get some value out of this conversation.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. I mean, we can, if you come up with more thoughts on it, let me know. We get you back on and we'll expand because it's an important topic.
Well, we're in the middle of some fin placement on a mid lane, so I got to get back down there. So I've still got this foam dust on here.
Cool. All right. Thanks, Devon. I'll let you, you get back to it.
All right. Thank you, Michael. See you, man.
Thank you for tuning into the Surf Mastery podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with a friend. Also, the best way that you can help support and grow the show is to subscribe, rate and review on whatever app you're using, be it Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and of course we are now on YouTube, so you can watch the video version of this podcast on YouTube. Be sure to check that out. Also, go to surfmastery.com for more surfing tips via the blog. You can also book in a personal online surf coaching session with me, also at surfmastery.com. There are 2 free downloadable PDFs, one with the 5 best tips from this show and the 5 best exercises to improve your surfing. So go to surfmastery.com. On the homepage there, you'll see them. Until next time, keep surfing.